Welcome on board. It's a pleasure to be with you again today. My name is Adenike Babalola, and we are going to be looking at the IELTS Writing Task 2, how to generate ideas for your essay. All right. So allow me to, crumble that and then go to the introduction. Okay. So briefly introducing myself, my name again is Adenike Babalola, and I'm the podcast host of Mother Isn't Murder and African Stories for Kids. I have been an online IELTS coach since 2017, and I have taken the IELTS test 3 times between 2017 and 2024. I also authored this book on divine guidance, which is me, the Holy Spirit. I am a homeschool mom of 2 kids. I'm a freelance content writer, an aspiring polyglot, and I have my bachelor's degree in English from Obafemi Awolowo University, Ilefe, Nigeria. I currently reside in South Korea with my husband and 2 kids, okay? So I talked about taking the exam 3 times, and this is the results for the latest exam that I took. I got the test report from, of course, after the main exam. So this is, the overall of 8, with 8.5 in listening, 8 in reading, 6.5 in writing, and 8.5 in speaking. These are the 2 previous results. I like to show this result so that if there's somebody here who is listening to me for the first time or watching me for the first time, you understand that this is real. Okay, so this is what your result will look like after you have taken the test, you have seen the online result, and this is what your test report form would look like. So if you're, using this for Canada, for example, the number that I sealed at the bottom here, this TRF, the test report form number, is what you're going to input on the IRCC website so that it can verify your results. Okay, so we're going to go straight to my process for generating ideas. I want us to look at this together and then look at some examples before we now proceed to answering our own question. But before we go on, I would like to say that if you have any questions, please use the chat. I'm going to go through the chat as we proceed so that I can address whatever concerns that you have. Also, I would encourage us to make this interactive and engaging for us. So far, I appreciate your responses to why you want to know how to improve, how to generate ideas better. And somebody has given us 2 reasons, of which another person agreed with her. She said limited time is one reason, and another reason is trying to find the vocabulary that you need to put out your ideas. Okay, so this is my 5-step process. This is what my procedure has been. I've taken the test 3 times in exam mode, going beyond my coaching mode. And this is what I always do. As soon as I see a question, the first thing I do is I read the question and I determine the essay type. Now, what some people do as soon as they see the question is they panic. They panic and they see what they begin to feel, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? How am I going to write this? I want you to replace panic with action. Tell yourself, if I know the type of essay that this is, I would know how to respond to it. And I've always said that knowledge is the antidote for fear. If you don't want to be afraid of what you have to do, master it. Now, in the IELTS Writing Task 2, there are 2 types, there are 5 types of essays, 5 questions. The questions can be asked in, 5 major ways. However, under the opinion essay, you can have the question format adjusted to about 8 different forms or versions. Okay, so when you see a question, the first thing you need to do is ask yourself, what type of essay is this? Now, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to look at this question. This is the question we're going to be using today. Please, can you see it? This is the question we're going to be practicing with today. I want you to read this question and then tell me what you think the essay type is. I'm going to read this aloud because I know some people are listening to me via the podcast, okay? So this is being recorded. This is being hosted on Zoom, and it is being recorded, and it's also being recorded for the podcast as well. So you might watch it on YouTube, or you might listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or other podcast listening platforms. Now I'm going ahead to read this question. In many countries, people are now living longer than ever before. Some people say an aging population creates problems for governments. Other people think there are benefits if society has more elderly people. That is the question prompt. It's talking about what do you think this question is talking about? the population, the aging population, elderly people. Okay, now the question itself says, to what extent do the advantages of having an aging population outweigh the disadvantages? To what extent do the advantages of having an aging population outweigh the disadvantages? Now, what type of essay is this? Can somebody tell us? What kind of essay is this? When the question asks you if the advantages of something is more than the disadvantages, what type of essay do you think this is? Okay, if you're not sure, can you guess? If you're not so sure, can you guess what kind of essay this is? Okay, to save us time, this is an opinion essay. This is one of the formats that the opinion essay can take. This is one of the formats that the opinion essay can take. You can be asked, to what extent do you agree or disagree? And you can be asked, do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? However, in this particular context, what we have is a combination of both questions. To what extent do the advantages of having an aging population outweigh the disadvantages? We're going to come back to this question, but I just wanted to show you what I meant by the first step in this idea generation process. You read the question and you determine the essay type it is. As soon as you do that, your mind begins to prepare to answer the question. But that's not where you're stopping. We go on to number 2. My second step, the second step in my process says, make the question make sense to your mind. What this means is, it is not enough to read the question. It is not enough to say, okay, I've figured out the type of essay that it is. You need to really understand, what that question means. And in this case, to understand what the question means, you need to simplify the words or repeat some of the expressions to yourself in different ways. Now, in many countries, obviously, I can begin to think about Japan, Nigeria, China, South Korea, the US, the UK, and so on and so forth. Now, what they're saying is people are living longer than ever before. What does that mean? It means that before, if people used to die at age 70, now they are dying at age 80. I know that in South Korea, they live for long. I see so many, elderly people, and I'm like, in Nigeria, yes, we have elderly people, but they are not this common. And I know it's because they have a very healthy lifestyle and all of that. Maybe that's just one reason. But the point of this question is, people are living longer. What did I just do? I helped myself to process the question. I'm helping my mind to process the question so that it is clear to me. Now, the question did not stop there. It says, some people say an aging population. What does aging population mean? It means that the population is, you have more old people, or, you have more elderly people. That's the proper expression. More elderly people than youth. And which is actually the reality in a country like South Korea, because they have a low birth rate of about 0.72%, less than one child to a woman. Okay, so the question is, this question is saying that when you have more elderly people than youth, there are more problems for the government. That's what some people think. Now, other people think there are benefits if society has more elderly people. It means that if a society has, let's say, 40% elderly people, or let me even say 50% elderly people, and you have the middle age and the youth spreading across the others, some people think that there are good sides to this. Now, as you see what we are doing, we are changing the words. We're explaining it to our mind. Just as somebody said before, there is not enough time to keep repeating and repeating the way I'm speaking. It's because this is a practice session. But if we're doing this on paper, you will be on the line, living longer. Okay, this is talking about, older people or elderly people, living for long and all of that, versus young people, having, enough young people in the society. So what you do, the second thing you do is make the question make sense to you. If you don't understand the question, there is almost no way you can quickly come up with points that you're going to use for that question. I'll say that again. If you look at the question and you don't make sense of it, it's going to be difficult for you to know what you want to write about. And that's why you should take some time to truly understand what the question is saying to you. But that's not where you stop. The third thing is understand what the question expects you to do. In this context, looking at this particular question, what are we supposed to do? This question down here is what your real task is. This up here is the prompt. That's the question prompt. Now, the question for you is, to what extent do the advantages of having an aging population outweigh the disadvantages? So this means that, do the good parts, are there more good sides to having more elderly people than younger people, or do you have more bad sides? So I'm going to ask you now, even though this is not where we're not settling down here, we're going to look at some examples, but I want to show you something. I want to ask you, or I'm asking you right now, do you think there are more benefits than disadvantages to having more elderly people in the society? I want you to think about it. When you say you have elderly people in society, what do they do in the society? What are they, what is the value? Let me put it like that. What is the value of elderly people, of more elderly people? Okay, of course, there's hardly a society that doesn't have elderly people. But when you have more elderly people, let's assume that in every 10, you have 6 elderly people, 3, or let me even say 5 elderly people, 3 middle-aged, 1 teenager, 1 infant, or something like that. What is good about having more elderly people, and what is bad about having more elderly people? As far as this question is concerned, it says, to what extent? When a question says to what extent, it means that you're most likely going to have something being more than the other. Something will be more and something will be less. So if you think there are more advantages, then you're most likely going to have fewer disadvantages. If you think there are fewer advantages, you're most likely going to have more disadvantages. I hope you're getting it. Please, if you're flowing with me, if this is making sense to you, please just put a comment in the chat, maybe 1 word or something to just let me know that this is clear. Now, the next step in the idea generation process is decide on your response. Thank you so much for your feedback. I appreciate you. Okay, so number 4 says decide on your response to the question. What are you saying to the question? What are you saying to the question? I'm going to very clear. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to show you another way to manage your 40 minutes. You know that somebody told us that managing time, limited time, is an issue when it comes to writing the task 2, or when it comes to generating ideas. I'm going to show you what I recommend and what I have learned from British Council educators. Number 4 says decide on your response to the question. This means that you ask yourself, what do I think? Remember that this is an opinion essay, so your opinion is what they want to read. They want to see what you think about this question. So when you've understood the question like that, and you've read what it said, right? You now ask yourself, what do I think? What do I think? Now, this applies even to a question that is not necessarily an opinion essay. Even a discussion essay still says discuss both these views and give your own opinion. That's a discussion essay. And when it is a double or direct question essay, you have the first part, you have the second part, and of course you have to give your response. So your response is not always your opinion, but it is what the question requires. Are we flowing? Now, when you've truly understood the question, it will be easy for you to begin to think. But let me say that at this point, there might be a problem. What is this problem, and why do I believe this problem can occur? If you do not know anything about the elderly population, or you don't know anything about the usefulness of having more elderly people than young people in the society, that's one side. Or you do not know the benefits of having more young people in the society than elderly people. If you don't know, you're completely blank. At this point, I can assure you that there is nothing you can do, except you're going to have some magical divine revelation at that point. And that is why the IELTS is mainly it's not mainly for professionals, but it is something that tests your knowledge across different aspects. It's not specific to a particular area. It touches on different aspects of life. And what I'm saying in essence is, if your mind is not rich enough, if you don't have a vast knowledge of the world, it might be difficult to generate ideas. No one person can give you a magic wand that will make you automatically come up with ideas if your mind is not nourished enough. And so at the end of this session, I'm going to tell you some things I recommend for, improving your general knowledge of the world. But this is just to say that if you know what it is, if you're informed generally, it will be easy for you to write this. But that does not mean that your point would, has to be something you really believe. When you write the essay task, the writing task too, your points don't have to be truly, truly what you believe. It can be something somebody else believes in. It can be anything at all, so long as you can back it up, you can justify it. The final step in this procedure is come up with reasons for your response. And that means that if you say something, you must defend it. If you make a point, you need to back it up. You need to tell us why you have a reason. So for this question, if you say that, there are more benefits to having having the aging population, more people that are elderly than younger people, why do you say so? Now I want to go ahead to show you the band descriptor. All of these things I'm talking about are documented somewhere. There is a procedure that the IELTS examiners use when marking your task. I'm sharing the IELTS Writing Task 2-band descriptor. This is something my students have had over time, and this is something you can easily access on the internet. Just type IELTS Writing Task 2-band descriptors. It shows you what the examiners expect for each of the bands. 987. Let me just click on it. You see it for 987-654-3210. I'm not going to focus on the lower bands because, this would only show you the mistakes you should avoid, the things that you're not doing right and all of that. But I'm going to show you for 6, 7, for 7, 8, and 9, because I know that this is what many of us are aspiring to, right? Now, let's assume that you're going for a band 8. I just want to show you this. The task response means that, did you respond to the question as expected? Did you write that essay the way the question itself required you to? Now look at the task response, condition or description for a band 8. The prompt is appropriately and sufficiently addressed. A clear and well-developed position is presented in response to the question or questions. Ideas are relevant, well-extended, and supported. There may be occasional omissions or lapses in content. You can read through this while I'm showing the screen. But what I want to show you is, before your essay can be very good, you need to make sure that the ideas that you come up with are relevant, well extended, and supported. In fact, if you're aiming for a band 9, your ideas have to be relevant, fully extended, and well supported. And if you are not going for a 9 or 8, let's assume that 7 is perfect for you. It means that main ideas are extended and supported, but there may be a tendency to overgeneralize, or there may be a lack of focus and precision in supporting ideas or material. Why have I shown you this? This is like the marking guide. This is like this is what they use to assess you, even though I believe that they have a version that is more complex than this. Why am I sharing this with you? If you know what the examiners want, you can give it to them easily. Now I'm going to talk about how to manage your time, since that was the first problem that was, pointed out when it comes to idea generation. I'm going to ask, is there anybody who has taken the test before? And if there is, when you saw your IELTS Writing Task 2 question, what was the first thing you did? What did you do? How did you manage that 40 minutes? What did you do with that time? The reason I ask is because the time is not enough. You might have that, you want to manage the time very quickly. You want to manage the time. You want to maximize it as quickly as possible. And so you speed into the question. And so you just start writing. And you go on and on and on. In between, you make mistakes, you cancel. In fact, somebody took the test, within the last 2 weeks, and she told me that she was not allowed to use pencil. So she used that pen. And, this person is in Nigeria. And, she made some mistakes here and there. But of course, it was a pen. Right here in South Korea, we're not allowed to use our pen. My pens were taken from me. You had to use your pencil. So I don't know where you are. I don't know what the conditions will be. But this is just me saying, if you rush into the question and then you begin to make mistakes, of course you can request, additional answer sheets. But sometimes when you go well prepared, you will know what to do. Now, for you to generate ideas, you see that I have talked about the 5 steps you should follow. In this case, I'm showing you what you do in the first 10 minutes. What I talked about, those 5 steps are what you do in the first 10 minutes, but there's a little more that you do. And that will deal with, developing the points and all of that. But before you can generate ideas, it is fundamental that you understand the question. Somebody says you should be writing by the 25th. Okay, exactly. Okay, so that's why I say that don't rush into this exam. Take your time to prepare well. If it takes you the whole year and you write the exam by December and you get the results you need, you will be proud of yourself because you did not waste money, you did not waste your effort. Okay, so for generating ideas, it is about understanding the question. I want to ask now, this question that I showed up here, is there anybody that does not understand it? Is there a possibility that this question is still not clear to you? Or maybe because we are practicing together, so maybe that's why it seems easy. But what would you do if you saw this kind of question in the exam hall? Do you think you understand it? The reason I emphasize making the question make sense to you is it is impossible to know what to write. It is impossible to generate ideas if you don't understand the question. Even with the IELTS reading and other skills, it's not that clear. Okay, now I want to ask you, what seems complex about this question? I want us to address the main problems. It might be clear to me, right? But to you who's listening to me, what do you think is not clear about this? I want to know it because this is a practice session. If you see a question like this in the exam, is it because the question is long? Is it because the question is quite lengthy? It has 3 sentences? Is it because they use words like aging population, elderly people? To what extent? What are the things that make this difficult? And something I always recommend is if you want to truly understand a question, when you see, where's my pencil? This is my pencil. Okay, let's assume you're doing this in the exam hall. All right, when you see a question, underline the words. Okay, this is my book. This is my Cambridge IELTS book, and this is the question. I don't know if you can see, but of course you can see it on the screen. When you see the question in front of you, what you do is underline many countries. What's another word for many countries? In nations around the world. Okay, now people are now living longer than ever before. Living longer means they are spending more time on earth. They're spending more time in the world. What I'm saying in essence is underline the words, maybe in 2s or in 3s, and come up with synonyms for those words. If you are not able to understand the question, it is almost impossible to generate ideas. But let me stop this now. I want us to look at some examples. I'm going to change my screen and I want you to see a particular question. This time around, the question is straightforward. So I'm hoping that it won't be a problem, okay? So now let me change my, excuse me. I'm going to change my screen now so you would see a different question. Yeah. This is a question on the British Council website. Can you see the new screen? Can you see the new screen? And can you see the box that has the question? I'm going to read out this question now because of those who are listening and not watching right now. Remember that you can get the video version of this session. The link for that will always be in the show notes, and I'm going to share it in this session as well. Now, the question says, many people go through life doing work that they hate or have no talent for. I want to ask you, does this question look simple? Let me read it again. Many people go through life doing work that they hate or have no talent for. I want to break down that question a little more. When it says people go through life, it means that they are living their lives. Now, doing work, maybe the jobs that they have, that they hate, they don't like the job or have no talent for. They don't have the innate skill, the innate ability to do that job. Is there anybody here that is working at a job they don't like? Is there anybody here that is currently feeling under-equipped? You don't feel like you have what it takes to do the job that you're doing or to work at the place where you are working. That's what this question is about. And what did I just do? If the question applies to you, or if there is something about you that connects with the question, or if there's something about somebody else that connects with the question, use that as a tool to understand the question and to generate the ideas. So for me, I can easily remember a job that I did and did not enjoy. I can easily remember one. But maybe that's not the case for you. Maybe you've always loved all the jobs that you have done. What you can do is think about the reverse. If you love the job that you do, why do you love it? Now think about somebody who would hate the job that they do. What would their reasons be? But that's not all. The question itself, the two questions for this question say, why does this happen? Why do people work at jobs that they don't like, that they dislike, or that they don't have the skill for? That's the first part of the question. Now, the second part of the question says, what are the consequences of this situation? When people do jobs that they don't like, or that they don't have the skill for, what can happen? What can this lead to? What can result from this? Okay, so you're more or less dealing with a double question. Remember that I said that when there are two parts to a question, it's a double or a direct question essay. Now, why does this happen is, what is the reason? What is the reason for this? What causes this? Now, the second part says, what are the consequences of this situation? What does this lead to? If you want to be able to generate ideas, you need to break down the question and truly understand it. That is the biggest thing you can do for yourself. And so as you prepare for the IELTS test, if you know, and it's about being honest and transparent with yourself. You have nothing to prove to anybody. This is your money, this is your result, this is your life, these are your goals. If you think that you're not mentally prepared for any kind of question, then give yourself that task. I will learn as much as I can about so many things, anything at all. This does not mean that you will know everything in the world, but it means that you are training your mind so that, because this IELTS is not just what you are doing, does not stop at IELTS. You want to move to another country to work or to study or to live there as part of the society. So you are still going to be using English. You're still going to be communicating with people. You're going to be doing your job. So the skills for this exam don't stop at the IELTS test itself. Now I want to show you the example that an examiner wrote for this. I'm not going to read the introduction. I'm not going to read most of the body paragraphs, but I want to show you the points. I want to show you the examiner's points. The first reason is lack of tertiary study options. That is one reason that this examiner gave. People do jobs, or go through life doing jobs they hate or don't have the skill for because of the lack of tertiary study options. I believe you can read it, you can see it, you can read it. I'm not going to read it because we're focusing on idea generation. In our next session, we're going to go through the actual development of your paragraphs. I decided to split this session into bits so that we can take the parts one by one before we attempt another full essay question, as my usual practice is. The first reason this examiner gives is lack of tertiary study options. Can you see the second reason? Look in the middle. It says the other main reason, which is closely aligned to the former one, is parental aspirations. It means that before this examiner got to the body paragraphs and started to write, he had scribbled down somewhere, lack of, what's the first one? Lack of tertiary study options. He wrote it on his book. And then on the other side, he wrote, parental aspirations. But that's not all to the question. The question has a second part, and it says, some of those children who do manage to jump through all the required hoops find that they are trapped in a career which do not suit their needs or abilities, and that they can see no escape from the life sentence imposed by well-meaning family. Now, the consequence, that's just introductory. The consequences, number one, is that they can suffer from job stress. That is the first consequence. You remember that the question asks for consequences. The first one here is job stress. The second one is dissatisfaction and distress. Okay, excuse me, I need to... Yeah. The second one is dissatisfaction and distress. This means that they are not happy, they are unhappy. Why am I showing you an examiner's model? It is impossible to write your complete essay if you did not fully understand the question. It is because this examiner understood the question. That's why he could come up with these points. Okay, now I want us to go back to our own question and try to brainstorm points. For the remaining time, I want us to think about the question that we have and then try to figure it out together. And I would end with one more part. But before we end with that final part, let's do this together. Imagine that you are in the exam hall and you can see a question like this. What will your points be? I don't want to have to keep quiet for long, but I want us to attempt this. I don't want to waste a second because I know this is late night in the UK and Canada and Nigeria. In Canada, it's evening. This is early morning in South Korea. Okay, so I want you to come up with points. Look at this question. People are now living longer than ever before. Some people say that an aging population creates problems for governments. Other people think there are benefits if society has more elderly people. To what extent do the advantages of having an aging population outweigh the disadvantages? Remember that outweigh means more than. So are the advantages more than the disadvantages, or are the disadvantages more than the advantages? Advantages means the good sides. Disadvantages means the bad sides. So please put your points into the chat. Okay? Put your points into the chat. It reduces criminal activities. Okay? Because elderly people would not commit crime. Okay? I can develop that point. I can. Okay, but I want to be sure I understand the advantage. It upholds the culture because they stay for longer and they can transfer their knowledge, their wisdom to younger people, right? Thank you so much. Thank you. This is amazing. Older people help to preserve the culture. Thank you. Elderly people are less productive. Thank you. You are going off the advantages. That's what I want to see. I want to see both sides because this question talks about, do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? This is how you brainstorm. So it means that elderly people are not that efficient. Well, who says, if you come to South Korea, you'll see that there are a lot of efficient people here. Sometimes I look at them and I wonder, where do they get their strength from? Where do they get their strength from? But at this point, if you can develop it, you're good. So can you share more with me? What are other advantages of having more elderly people than younger people or the younger population? And what are the demerits? If you have more elderly people than younger people, what will happen to the younger people? What will happen to the elderly if you say that we should get rid of them? So I want you to think about think. To generate ideas, you have to think. You have to think. See, to make this easy, imagine that you are talking with a friend. You're just having a conversation with a friend, and you're like, we have so many, elderly people around us. Why do you think, is it really good for us to have more elderly people than young people? People like in South Korea will understand this question better. Well, because it's happening in their society. But if you are not, if it's not in your society, or if it's not something you're familiar with, then you might feel like you don't know what to say. But I can assure you that once you can understand the question, once you can think about it, you will come up with points. Thank you so much. Those points are valuable. The points you shared with me just now are very valuable. Okay? So you have, the nation can go extinct. Thank you, because it means that they're not, what's the point? They're not producing more younger generation. Okay, so when the older people die, it means that you don't have enough younger people to keep the workforce active. Thank you. I see another point. Demerit, inability to fill some jobs. Yeah, there might be roles that require younger people and younger skill or younger mind. And so when you have more elderly people there, those jobs might be vacant. Thank you so much. We are thinking. This is how you generate ideas. You think. You understand the question and you play it through your mind. Now, I'm going to change my screen to show you what an examiner did during a session that I attended. Okay? So I've shown you my process. And the process, in other words, says, what type of essay is this? What does this question mean? What am I supposed to do? What is my response to the question? And why do I have this response? That's what you're doing in essence. Now, I want you to look at this page. I know it's not very clear, but because these are screenshots, but this is the session I attended while I was preparing for my 2024 exam, the exam I took in January. I booked my test with British Council, so I had access to the IELTS Ready Premium, which is like a reservoir of resources. It's like a big room filled with practice questions, guided trainings, and all of that. During one of the sessions by this educator, we picked a question, a double or direct question essay. And then, can you see this point about brainstorming? We had to brainstorm. She came up with points. I'm zooming the screen so you can see exactly what. Okay, this question has to do with older people. Can you imagine? The question says, experts say that older people are healthiest when they spend time with others and exercise daily. However, many older people today suffer from loneliness and poor physical fitness. What do you think are causes of these problems? What measures could be taken to reduce them? Now, brainstorm, you see that there is a side. She has this side, reasons for loneliness, reasons for lack of exercise, and measures to help. How many points do you see under them? Under the reasons, she came up with about 3 reasons for loneliness, about 3 reasons for lack of fitness, and about 4 reasons for measures to help. That does not mean that you're going to be writing on all of them. No. When you generate ideas, you generate as many as possible within the time that you have. But you must select your best. The ones that you can explain, the ones that you can, justify, the ones that you can find examples for. Those are the points that you pick. So even if you have an idea, but you cannot develop it, that's not a good idea for you. You need to be able to generate the idea and develop it, justify it, because that's what they want to see. They want you to state your points, they want you to develop your point, they want you to illustrate your point. And that is why in my essay ebook, which many of my students have, or people who have bought it before, just follow that model. You state your point, you develop it, and then you illustrate it. I'm going to show you exactly what that means. I'm not showing you my essay ebook example, I'm showing you the examiner's example. So allow me to zoom back, and I'm going to show you the examiner's, one of the samples used by the examiner, one of the educators who hosted this session. Okay, so this lady showed the example that a student wrote, which was not good enough. Then she showed another example, which is in here. So, this is the examiner's sample, this is the sample that she used while talking about the question. But I want you to look at this, body paragraphs. Can you see this colored, this colored page where you see green, blue, red, orange? That's how you develop your ideas. But today, we're not looking at developing the ideas. We're looking at generating the ideas. Before you can write your body paragraphs, you need ideas. And you need to generate ideas and choose your best ideas. But this is the process. You write your topic sentence, you expand it, you give your example, and if you want to emphasize it, fine. But why am I showing you this? It is not impossible. Thank you. I see another disadvantage. Elderly people are more liable to having debilitating diseases which could put stress on the nation's health sector. Bless you. Thank you for this. To wrap up this session, I'm going to show you the examiner's model for this particular question. That's what I'm going to show you, because the points that you have used are very valuable and they are similar to what the examiner used. I'm going to show you that example, and the reason I say this is, yes, I can show you what my ebook looks like and all of that, but I'm more interested in you seeing, when you see it from the source, you have no reason not to do what the source is doing. And I say that because if you give them what they want, they will give you what you want. It is almost automatic. And that is why I wish some of us would be rigid about it. I know what they want, I'm going to give it to them. So I'm going to show you the examiner sample right now. Just allow me to change the screen. So, even if this is another question in my essay book, for example, a similar question, but I'm not even going to dwell on it because it's the same format I used. But I want to show you this exact question. This question we're dealing with in the Cambridge book. If you have the Cambridge 18, I'm using the academic book. If you have the Cambridge book 18, this is page 97. Okay, it's 97. Now, to show you the examiner's model, I'm going to the back of the book. Okay, at the back of the book, you see the samples that examiners write. And I always recommend it because you will see the example that an examiner wrote and you will see the feedback of another examiner. So I'm going to open that right here on the screen. I'm going to what page? I'm going to 136. So allow me to scroll down. And once we finish with that, we're wrapping up the session. Okay, once we finish with that examiner sample, we're going to wrap up the session. I've just shown you what it takes to generate your ideas. And you have given me some ideas. Now I want to show you how this examiner developed it. I'm going to read it very quickly because there's the podcast version of this session. So I'm going to read it. The population in most parts of the world is aging. People are living longer and there are fewer younger people in many places as birth rates fall. This phenomenon has pros and cons, but this essay will contend that on balance, the advantages of having an older population outweigh the negatives. That's the introduction. And you don't know if you attended our previous session, you see that I told you that there are about at least two ways to write an introduction. Some people write like this, where they just say what they're going to do alone. And the method I have always used, which we saw that some examiners use, is they summarize their points into the introduction, but this essay doesn't do that. Now let's look at the body paragraphs. The first issue that occurs to many people when considering the aging population is the expense. If people live longer, they may have more than 30 years of retirement and may need to be supported financially by the government or their families. If they experience age-related illness, this impacts the health system. This is the point somebody gave us right now, and takes up resources needed by other people in society. Excuse me. What's more, when older people are financially independent, it might be hard for younger people if they have to compete to get a foot in the door of the housing market or gain employment. The next paragraph. That being said, older people have a lot to contribute in terms of wisdom, experience, and skills. Many people are active and productive for longer than their counterparts were 50 years ago and are an asset to the economy and society well into their old age. They are able to work for longer, and after retirement, they contribute in many ways too, such as by doing charitable work, spending money as consumers, and supporting their families. Grandparents often care for their young grandchildren, making it easier for both parents to work. Conclusion. While it is true that an aging population poses challenges for governments, it is clear that these are outweighed by the significant benefits that elderly people bring to society. Did you listen to me? Did you read it? Did you read with me? You see that it provided more advantages in here, but it also provided disadvantages in the first paragraph. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. So you see that it is the points that you gave me that were found in here. Many of those points were included here. Maybe not all of them, but many were here. I'm not going to stop there. I want you to read the comments of the examiner that assessed this examiner. That's the way it is. I want us to read it together so that you know how they thank you. So you know how they, process your own writing. If they can assess this writing in a particular way, then you would know how they would assess your own writing. Let me read further. I want us to wrap up with this so that we can go and rest and go about our businesses, all right? So let me scroll down. Here are the comments from another examiner. This is a good response to the task. Both sides of the argument are presented, with the ideas extended for both. The candidate makes their position clear from the beginning that there are more advantages than disadvantages. The second paragraph addresses the expense of looking after the elderly, the health system, and the cost for governments. It also captures the challenge that older people take up houses and jobs so younger people cannot progress. The third paragraph presents the advantages of the wisdom, experience, and skills older people can bring, that they are more active and remain productive for longer. Not only working, but also doing charitable work, spending money as consumers, supporting their families, and even grandchildren for the working parents. This means that the conclusion is relevant and justified. Ideas are organized and cohesion has good progression. Vocabulary is skillfully used with some high-level terms, phenomenon, age-related illness, impacts the health system, and some sophisticated examples get a foot in the door, counterparts. There are a range of complex grammatical structures, including several conditional structures. When you use sentences with if, you are writing well. Okay, those are conditional structures. The conditionals are used to emphasize the challenges presented and are without errors. This is a high-level, fully developed response with ideas that are well supported, extended, and engaging. I've analyzed the feedback that examiners write, and you know that this is not less, this is between a band 8 and 9. It is not less than that. Because there are almost no flaws, so it's probably between 8.5 and 9. Okay? This is the example. This is the examiner's sample for the question that we looked at. Okay, somebody has a question. I want to ask, with this question, does that mean that we have to write more of advantages or support that the advantages outweigh the advantages as in this model answer? No. If you have more disadvantages, if you look at my essay ebook, let me show you something. Okay, to answer your question, let me show you something in my essay ebook, just for you to know the format. For this question, I'm going to say that there are more advantages. This is the sample in my ebook. For people training with me, this is page 23. If you've not gotten this essay book and you'd like to get it, I'll share the link at the end. No, so for this question, I chose to have 2 points for the advantages and 1 point for disadvantage. Now, usually in the exam, we say that you can have 2 points. If you have 1 point, it might be too little. If you have 2 to 3 points, it's fine. Okay, so because remember that your exam sheet, I can't show you right now, but your exam sheet is, you have just 2 pages, like it's not even up to 2 pages, but you can ask for more. You don't have so much time, you have 40 minutes. If you've used 10 minutes to plan, it means you have 20 minutes to write, 10 minutes to proofread. So you don't have so much time. That's why you have to decide, how many points am I going to use for advantages? How many would I use for disadvantages? And what I recommend and what is realistic is if you're saying you have more advantages, let your advantages be 2 points so that you can develop them and illustrate them. And where you have disadvantage, your disadvantage will be 1. So it means 2 advantages against 1 disadvantage. But if you have more disadvantages, for example, with this question, if you're saying that there are more disadvantages of having more elderly people, then it means you would have 2 disadvantages versus 1 advantage. So to answer your question clearly, you need to have more points for the side that you feel has more, whatever side is more. If you say your advantages are more, then give it 2 points. If you say your disadvantages are more, give it 2 points. But make sure that when you have 2 for one side, you have 1 for the other. Looking at this examiner sample, you see that the number of points up here, we have about 2 for this first one. Or I think about, is it 2 to 3, yeah, and then 3 to 4. Now, we don't really recommend, or if you look at the formats that educators use while they are teaching, they tell you that don't give too many points so that you can take the time to develop them. In this case, he developed them and gave a few examples in between. This is like expert level writing. But for many people who are still at the band 6, band 5, band 7, be careful to make sure that the points you state, you can develop them carefully. You can, develop them well. You can illustrate them well. Okay? So in summary, the answer to that question is, whatever you decide, make sure that you have more points for one side and fewer points for the other side, which this examiner did. He even said it in his introduction. There are more advantages than negatives. Okay, so I hope I answered your question. Thank you very much. Now we need to wrap up. Okay, we have just 4 minutes and I want to ask you, do you have any questions for me? In our next session, we are going to develop our own paragraphs. We are going to write the paragraphs out. I have taken the time last week we had introduction, and I'm going to just, change my screen to show you those other sessions so that if you've missed out on any session before, you can watch them, okay? So this is the link to the podcast. If you prefer to listen, I'm just going to copy the link. If you prefer to listen to podcast sessions, let's say you don't have the time to sit down and watch anything, you can listen. You listen to this. I've put that link in the chat. Now, if you want to get the essay ebook, okay, it's very affordable, barely $6. Okay, you put it here. I put the link here. You see samples for every type of question that you have in the IELTS Writing Task too. Now, if you want to watch the video replays of this session, I put them on my seller store as a free course. I upload all the lessons so that somebody can go there and access all of them. We have done the listening. We have done note completion under listening. We have done the summary completion under reading, matching headings under reading. To what extent do you agree or disagree under writing? We have done, is this a good thing or a bad thing? We have done that, which is under writing task 2. We've done speaking part 2. We've had the session for yes, no, not given in reading. We've had the session for formal letter writing in task 1, map labeling and listening. My exam experience for the exam, the IELTS exam in South Korea is also here. And you can watch that as a video on YouTube. I put it on YouTube because I know that there are things there that people need to see. And also we've had, a session for table completion under reading. We've had the double or direct question essay under writing task 2. We've done how to write your introduction. We did that last week. Today, we just completed the how to generate ideas. How to generate ideas, and it's going to be here for you, so you can access that. And of course, the next session is going to be for body paragraphs and all of that. So for the last 1 to 2 minutes, I just want to show you. If you're taking my training, this is good for you. If you're not, if you want to, this is it. But this is just to show you what the training itself entails. People who train with me get access to the video lessons. They get access to 3 one-on-one sessions. They get access to 3 Cambridge books they can practice with. They have access to my writing ebooks, writing evaluation, speaking evaluation. They come to this general, the class on Zoom because they always get emails concerning them. We have the Telegram group and we have sessions where I check in on them on WhatsApp, okay? So these are the details of the training. Down here, you see the 7 modules, okay? So you have the introduction module, you have the listening module, you have the reading module where you learn all about the question types that we have. You have the writing module. In between these modules, you're expected to practice with the Cambridge books. You update me, I know how you're doing. And for the questions that are not clear, we have your private sessions to go over them. This is the mock test that I did. If you want to take the test on computer, you can go through that. And of course, this is, these are additional, this is like a bonus module where you see how I use the writing task 1 and 2 ebooks with, some of my, students, and these are results down here. So this is just to show you what my paid training looks like. And if you're taking the training already, I believe that you're progressing well. I see that some people are on the verge of completing their lessons. Some people have booked their sessions with me for the week. If you haven't booked your sessions, please make sure you use the Calendly link It is in the folder I sent to you. If I've not sent it, please let me know. So this is everything that you need, okay? But this is me just saying that I don't want you to take this exam more than once. If I can say it authoritatively, you don't deserve to take this exam more than once. And so I want you to put your heart into it. Give it your best. Take your time to prepare. Learn everything that you need to know. Be confident in yourself. Don't do it under pressure. Don't let anybody tell you, just go and do it. It's just English. There's preparation involved. As you have seen, there's practice involved. Okay, so if you don't have any questions for me, I believe that we can wrap up now. It is exactly 7 on the dot my time. I believe it is 11 p.m. your time in Nigeria and 10 p.m. your time in the UK. In Canada, it's probably 5 p.m. Okay, so thank you so much for joining. Once again, my name is Adenike Babalola, and I look forward to seeing you next time. I think there's one thing I'm missing. Forgive me. So I said something about you improving your knowledge of the world. I'm going to run down to that slide. The very last slide. These are my recommendations. If you don't know how to come up with ideas, read books, magazines, and the news. Read a lot of things. Notice how other people write. Now go through different kind of essay questions to see the kind of questions that IELTS would ask, and just assume that you're answering them in your mind. Now read the examiner samples just like the one I showed you. Don't stop practicing. Get feedback when you can, and make sure you enrich your mind about the world. These are my recommendations because I want you to pass this exam once. Do it once and move on. I've had many students who have taken the exam and had their results. Okay, these are some of their results. So make sure you take this test and you move on and you do well. I wish you a wonderful day. I wish you a wonderful week, and my regards to your family. God bless you. Bye.